Good afternoon and welcome to episode 7 of At Your Service with Haber and Martinez. We have a little bit of a different kind of show for you today. We have a guest who's going to talk with you about personal experience, and I thought that maybe the best way to express to you the nature of this show was to start by giving you a video clip that expresses it a lot better than I ever could. Howard, would you?
Nope. So if I asked you about art, you'd probably give me the skinny on every art book ever written. Michelangelo. I know a lot about him. Life's work, political aspirations, him and the Pope, sexual orientation, the whole works, right? I bet you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel. You've never actually stood there and looked up at that beautiful ceiling. Seen that. If I asked you about women, you'd probably give me a silver say your personal favorites. You may have even been laid a few times. But you can't tell me what it feels like to wake up next to a woman and feel truly happy. You're a tough kid. I ask you about war, you probably throw Shakespeare at me, right? Once more into the breach, dear friends. But you've never been near one. You've never held your best friend's head in your lap and watch him gasp his last breath looking to you for help. I ask you about love, you probably quote me a sonnet. But you've never looked at a woman and been totally vulnerable. Known someone that could level you with her eyes. Feeling like God put an angel on earth just for you. Who could rescue you from the depths of hell. And you wouldn't know what it's like to be her angel. To have that love for her be there forever. Through anything. Through cancer. And you would know about sitting up in a hospital room for 2 months, holding her hand, because the doctors could see in your eyes that the terms visiting hours don't apply to you. You don't know about real loss, because that only occurs when you love something more than you love yourself. I doubt that.
That's right. Apropos of that scene, we're going to talk about stand your ground today. And Ed and I can talk to you about the law. We can talk to you about procedure. We can talk to you about precedent. But what we can't do, the same way that Matt Damon could not talk about the Sistine Chapel or war or love, is express to you what it's like to actually go through the system as the accused, to be that person, to be in that moment, to make that split-second decision, to act in self-defense, and then to get arrested for it, handcuffed, put in a police car, transported, booked into the jail, forced to post bond, having to deal with your family and your friends and your employer, ultimately standing in front of a judge, being accused of a crime, hiring an attorney, putting your life in that person's hands. We can't express that to you. We can't tell you what it's like to face a prosecutor as a defendant and have to reject a plea offer, to go in front of a judge, to be told that you're looking at 30 years in prison with minimum mandatory time of 6 years. To know that your career, your pension, everything you've worked for, your family, all of it is at stake. Just like that clip that you watched from Good Will Hunting, I can't explain that to you. But our guest can, and he will. But before he does, let me show you one more clip so that you know who we're going to be introducing you to in a moment, and you'll understand a little bit about his story. Roll it.
Well, Jackie, that fire captain was charged with aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer, but his defense team argued he has the right to protect himself and open the door, weapon in hand. A strong show of support from fellow firefighters and family members for Nicholas Marian moments after a judge dismissed his case.
I'm elated. It's 1,000 pounds just lifted off my shoulders.
The Miami-Dade fire captain was arrested on March 23rd after Miami Shores police say they knocked on his door because his car matched the description of a swerving vehicle someone called about. In court, the officer also gave a description of what the caller told police they saw.
The complaint came in as the male had abruptly parked the vehicle, got out of the vehicle, waved the gun, and then continued walking.
Once at Marian's home, police say they saw Marian grab a shotgun from his couch. Marian was then accused of pointing the gun at the officers' faces for a few seconds until he lowered the weapon and backed away from it.
And the judge threw this case out because he stood his ground pursuant to Florida law. He was immunized from prosecution. He should have never been arrested.
Prosecutors asked the judge to deny the stand your ground request, claiming, among other things, that the fire captain pointed the shotgun for more than a second, knowing they were police officers at his door.
I do believe in protecting myself, my family, and my home. However, sometimes we rely on that too much. And just be careful. If you have a weapon, make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you understand the laws.
And the fire captain tells us he was suspended without pay after the arrest, so he is looking forward to going back to work as soon as possible. Reporting live outside the courthouse, I'm Laura Rodriguez, NBC 6 News.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Howard. And thank you, Nick Marian, for being here with us today. We really appreciate your coming on set to share your experience with the folks. This is an incredible story, and I was proud to have been a part of it. But this is not about me. This is not about my role. This is not about anything I did. Again, Ed and I can talk about the law until we're blue in the face. This is about you, and it's about how you went through this thing, and what you're willing to share of that experience with the people.
My story is an open book, Mike. Anything for you. You're the reason I'm here today, quite honestly. I haven't seen that video in quite a while, so it caught me by surprise. It was quite a moment. That was...
I saw something and I didn't even know about this, and I want to ask you right out of the gate. We didn't talk about this before, but I think you can answer this, Nick. They suspended you without pay for an allegation which later turned out to be complete crap. How long were you suspended without pay, and what rationale did they use for suspending you just for getting arrested?
I think the entire ordeal lasted about 9 months.
Jesus
more or less.
Christ.
So I was arrested March 23rd. I think it was June 16th or 14th, sometime in June, that the charges were formally brought forward. At that time, I was suspended without pay. They call it NPS, no pay status. So there's only one salary coming into the house, which,
that's ridiculous.
We're running on 2 salaries. And
a lot of people don't understand this, and this is a lot of what we do is for the audience. Mainly what we do is for the people watching, not the lawyers that are sitting here trying to watch our show to nitpick us
Or learn how to do their job.
They're never going to admit that. But clients don't understand that, and even prosecutors and employers, when a cop arrests you, it's just an arrest. It does not mean you're guilty of the crime. It means that he found there was probable cause. And the way I always describe probable cause, when I used to teach at the police academy, I used to tell these guys, the easiest way to know probable cause is this. You're sitting there with all the facts on the side of the road. You got to make an arrest or not. Is it more probable than not that it occurred? That's a really low bar. And there's some cops that make the right arrest based on probable cause, but when you look into it deeper, you realize, okay, there's nothing here. When a prosecutor files charges, you're still not convicted. All that means is one guy or girl at the state attorney's office who may not have life experience, believes what the cops told them on the A form, or maybe did a little investigation, and they could be wrong. Now, some prosecutors are good. Right? When I was there, I never believed what the cops told me, not because I think they're liars, but because it's not my job. My job is to look at this openly and say, okay, what if these cops are wrong? Let me make sure. But a lot of prosecutors don't go through that. So employers, you guys need to understand, just because somebody is arrested, even if they're charged, they're not guilty. So they took your pay for 9 months and you were innocent. You did nothing wrong. If anything, they did a lot of things wrong. And that's just not right. Now, how did that make you feel when you were standing there? Let's start from the beginning, if we could.
Sure.
So from what I understand, what they said in the newscast is more or less true. We can go with that. But then you're in your house, and I assume you hear knocking on the door or banging. If I know cops, they banged on your door like they were serving a search warrant. Did they?
Back then, they would patrol the streets, but not have any lights on. Something changed, and today, maybe it's a result of the case. I don't know. They have the little light,
But not in your case.
In my case, no.
They didn't have the lights, what we call the
remember-
roof lights.
Yeah,
We're going back to what?
16.
2016. So back then, police were not as notorious and obvious as they are now. I mean, I live in North Miami. The red and blues are always on, not the strobes flashing, but the red and blue strips are on 24/7.
Correct.
They want to be seen.
Right.
Well, 2016,
They didn't.
this man sitting in his house has no clue there's police anywhere near him
And it's so that everybody understands, it's 10:30 at night
on a weeknight.
on a weeknight.
Mhm.
So he's sitting in his house, and how did they knock on the door?
They didn't knock. They pounded on it.
Of course, because that's how they always do. But you got to be. See, you guys got to be in the business to know. If I'm sitting in my house at 10:30 at night and they pound on your door the way they did for you, first thing that I think is, what the hell are the cops doing at my house?
Well, but
Because I know them. I know how they are.
My neighbors aren't going to knock on my door at 10:30. If they
Right.
do, they'll ring a doorbell, or it's a knock.
Or they'll call you or text
I'll
you.
call you.
But in this particular case, there was something that happened even before the knocking, correct?
Well, yes. So just to set the stage, it's about 10 at night, a little after 10. I'm eating pizza, watching a movie, having a beer with the pizza. I'm in my house. Everything's closed up.
Right.
It's locked up. I have a golden retriever. He was about 8 years old at the time. And he's my alarm system. My alarm system, my golden retriever, went nuts. It wasn't just, hey, I'm hungry, take me outside bark. He went nuts. Somebody's outside. As soon as he does that, I hear bam, bam, bam on my door. It sounded as if somebody was either trying to kick the door in.
Right.
I don't know. I have to be between the dog barking that loud and the door. I have to make a quick decision what's going on and react.
Now, I don't
I'm
want to
not
cut you off, but
No,
so
please.
stick with that for a second. But
Yeah.
let me just interject. This is not your first rodeo in this house, in this neighborhood, correct?
No, this
Okay,
is
so give us a little background so that we understand what's going through your mind. Because now remember, folks, forget about the cops. They're outside. They don't know what this man is thinking. But he's sitting in his house. His dog gives the holy crap, there's somebody going to break into our house bark. He hears pounding. And he's also aware of,
Well, we've been burglarized prior to this. We've broken into, robbed, come in the house, TV's gone, everything's gone. At least on one side of the house. My dog was beaten, my other golden retriever, with a stick that they grabbed from the house. We were also one night in the house and the alarm goes off. We had put on an alarm system subsequently, and the alarm goes off. It's 11:30 at night. And sure enough, we call the cops. I respond. I sweep the house, and one of my back windows is partly slit open. The cops come back in the morning, and they got some fingerprints. It's probably a kid, who knows what. But it's scary. It's scary when that happens. And in today's world, I rode rescue for 31 years here in Miami-Dade County. I've seen a lot in those years.
Yep.
And I know what can happen.
so you're sitting at home. You've got, well, and just so the folks know, I didn't mention this. I probably should have, because it's very important to thank Nick every day. He's a honorably discharged, commendated naval veteran who, after leaving the Navy with his awards for service and valor, decided to take a job as a firefighter and then serve his community, which he has now done. He's retired now, but he did for 31 years. So again, you're not talking about a guy who's not used to emergency situations, dealing with stuff, in an instant, at the snap of a finger, and reacting. So that said, tell us what happened.
So there's knocking on the door. That's where we left off.
Pound.
You hear the pounding on the door like they're serving a search warrant.
Pounding on the door. Well, I go back to what's happened before. Somebody's trying to get into the house. There's no other logical reason. And in my book, I've been through combat. I've been through scenarios in the military, and I'm used to reacting in a certain way. The job, the fire department, is you get up, you react. Looking back, could I have just sat there, gone into a closet, and called the police? That's an option, but that wasn't the option I took.
Well, but let's be fair to you. You're thinking that somebody's breaking in.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, you call the cops. By the time they get there, you're dead, or your family's dead, or they stole it. They did whatever they want to do.
When minutes count,
When
I love.
seconds count,
I agree.
they get their minutes.
I love when the liberals, the lefties, try to tell you, "Oh, that's what's the cops for." Do these morons not realize that the criminals realize that it takes the cops at least 4 to 5 minutes to get there, so they get everything done within the 4 or 5 minutes? They're not stupid. They don't want to get arrested. They know the same thing we all know.
Our neighborhood's a magnet during hurricanes. People come in, the house next door. The house next door to us, I had a guy coming in with a sledgehammer while the family's inside looking at him, telling him what's going on.
The biggest frustration,
happens.
homicide cops have always told me, their biggest frustration is that everything they do is after the fact.
Reacted.
Everybody's already dead, and now they're trying to find out who killed them. But that victim is dead.
So Nick is now you now on full 5-alarm alert, to take a fire department term.
I have to make a decision and go with it. My reaction was grab the nearest weapon. I have a weapon that I keep close by. And I had no time. I thought about looking outside, but I didn't want to expose myself and get shot in the face. Really, that's what I thought. Somebody's trying to get into my house. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what their intentions are. Sorry. So I grab the shotgun. I go to my door. My door opens out, but you have to step out and look to the right because I have a wall that right in front of the door. And I do so. My intention was, if somebody is out there, I want to turn the tables on them and get the drop on them, so to speak.
Right.
Get the upper hand, take the high ground, whatever. And that's what I did. The second I open the door, I do so quickly. I get out there quickly. I do level the gun because I throw off 3 bodies out there.
Of course. What are you going to walk out with a gun for? You're going to put it in your pocket?
It's dark.
The whole point of the gun is that if you got to use it,
It's not
so
a
you have
baseball
to
bat.
level it.
Yeah.
Right.
So I did that. It took a second or two for my eyes to adjust. They were out in the shadows. And it took a second for me. The first thing I noticed was a patch. Once I saw that and the badge, it made, no threat. The threat is gone. It's threat, no threat. Now it's no longer a threat. They start yelling. I put down the weapon immediately.
Well, they wrote that in the A form.
Yeah, they gave you the benefit of that doubt.
And if you give me a second, I want to do this for the audience. While we never want to have dead air, let me just point out something to you. Correct me if I'm wrong, Michael. You've read that A form many more times than I have. The officers, which we're going to take them at their word, although you and I have read enough A forms to know, they said what? He took 4 seconds?
Yeah, they
pull the gun
about
down?
5 seconds.
Okay. So let's say 5 seconds, but in reality, it's probably about 2 or 3. I doubt they had a stopwatch. But listen to this. Look how long it took. Heard what Nick said. He comes out of the door. He levels his gun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Normal. That's what somebody would do. You first have to assess. You assess they were cops. You dropped your shotgun. Well, what did he do wrong? He did nothing wrong.
Well, again, at this point, you've got 2 different prisms. The police are looking at it from one prism. He's looking at it from another prism. And I think part of the problem with this whole calculus is that the police were allowed to judge themselves in that moment. And that's really what landed Nick in the hot seat, was when he ultimately said to these guys after I'll let you tell it the way you want to tell
the story.
it. Right.
Because I disagree with you. I think Nick's reaction immediately after seeing that they were cops and everything he did after, which they all wrote in their own A form, that quoting him directly, should have let them, a seasoned officer would have realized this was just a misunderstanding.
Absolutely. That's my point. But go ahead, Nick. Tell us what happened.
So you lower your gun. That's where I think we left off. You lowered your gun because you realized
I
they were
immediately
cops.
lowered my gun.
Okay.
My next instinct was I was cool. It's like, all right, it's not a robbery. That's a good thing. You guys are cops. All right, we're good. In a split second, I'm thinking, I'm going to put the gun back inside. No, now they got to take the upper hand. Now they got to show me they're cops. And they get loud.
They escalated.
They escalate now. So I stop and I comply with whatever orders there were. I think put the gun right down. I want to make sure, it's a loaded weapon. Please handle it with care. I don't want an accidental discharge to ruin my night or theirs. But no shots were fired.
None.
So I put the weapon down. The officers now, they get loud. Now they get aggressive. One of them in particular, he wants to get up in my face and yell at me. I deal with cops every day. I'm a firefighter. I'm friends with a lot of my friends are cops. And I love cops and support cops to this day. Most of the cops where I live are good guys. I only have a beef with a couple of those guys. One of them really had a beef with me. That's a side.
Was he one of the ones on scene?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. That explains everything. Was it the guy that came out on the video?
Yes. Call him,
How did I know?
Call him tough.
How did I know? I could just see his whole body language. He is pissed.
Yeah.
In that video clip. Go ahead.
Yes. So anyway, he got loud, and I mean, I raised my voice also. I'm a man. I'm not gonna. I'm at my house. Why are you yelling at me?
That's the key. We got to make sure you understand. This man is in his house. Even before stand your ground, I think arguably he would have been okay under the castle doctrine. He's in his house. He thinks somebody's breaking into his house. It's not like Nick went down the middle of the street in his boxers with a shotgun chasing the cops. He's in his damn house. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Enjoying a good pizza, by the way.
which your dog subsequently enjoyed.
Yeah. His digestive tract wasn't so happy.
I was about to tell you, if anybody has dogs, that must have been a mess cleaning up.
Yeah. Well, that was part of the argument with the cops. They didn't want to let him go take care of his dog. They kept the man out there for, an hour?
Yeah.
Of course, that's what they do. But anyway,
and words were exchanged at some.
Well, they kept me up. Well, so he's loud in my face. I thought he was going to manhandle me. I raised my voice. I didn't raise my fist. I didn't get into a fight. I complied. I gated everything down.
Mm-hmm.
Now everybody's keyed up. I'm keyed up. They're keyed up. This has got to calm down. Finally, they had me sit down at the steps where they had me, as you said, Mike, for about an hour and a half.
Were you cuffed behind your back?
Initially, no, not for a while.
Okay.
See, I'm such a danger to them that they didn't cuff me. So anyway, I sat out there uncuffed for about an hour. It appeared to me that they didn't know what to do because they called the sergeant in, they called some other guy in. They're conferring, they're talking. Now they're in my house, searching my house for whatever.
I don't even understand that. I don't know what they think, unless it was a protective sweep. But I don't even think they could have done a protective sweep under that circumstance.
Don't know. They're going through my truck. They did all that, and I'm just sitting there. I'm now I'm getting a little upset. I had calmed down. I'm watching this. Nobody's talking to me. There's two of them standing, one here and one there, as if I'm going to get into a fight or do something with these guys. And I'm asking, what's going on? Nobody would say anything. Just stay there. Just stay there. All right. No questions, no answers, nothing. The sergeant comes and says, Sarge, what's going on? Nothing. I said, Sarge, you guys know me. I have a take-home car. It's been sitting there. It was there that evening, that night. I've had it for 11 years. Everybody there knows me. I know all these guys. And, well, I don't know you, the sergeant says. Oh, okay. So I already,
That's what you pretty much got to just, and I know you didn't, but you did a wonderful job from reading the A form. But for all of you out there, be careful at a point like that. My suggestion, Michael, I'm sure yours would be the same. Do not even engage with them anymore. Don't talk to them at all. When a cop that knows you says, I don't know you.
Well, so long story short, because we're already halfway through this show.
Coming
we haven't
to
even
that.
gotten to the arrest yet.
We're coming to this. I think this is kind of what tripped me up. I don't know. Maybe they already made their decision. I should have, as you always say, up to, be quiet, shut up. I kind of said something I shouldn't have. As soon as I threw it out there, I wanted to bring it back. I apologize, but once you throw words
but say
out
what you
there,
said, Nick, because it wasn't that bad. Say what you said.
and I said it, yeah, and I said it in court. I had to say it verbatim. It was basically verbatim. I asked one of the officers, "Hey, why don't you guys call Miami-Dade police over to the scene?" And he or she asked me, "Why do you want Miami-Dade?" Because you guys are a bunch of podunk ass Mayberry wannabe mother effers.
That was the end of was the end game.
The last part was a little rough, but honestly, look, it's not for them to arrest you. Besides, they have a job to do. Look at what they did going into your house. If they go into your house and they find 7 dead bodies in there, they're going to have a problem because now there is 7 dead bodies in there or 100 kilos of cocaine, and they had no business going into your house based on what happened. So they got a problem. And this is why they arrested you, because they didn't understand what they were doing. And I don't blame the officers as much. Let's be fair. I blame their training, and I blame supervisors that let them get away with stuff like this. Because I can guarantee you this is not the first time they did this.
And the fact that there's no check valve, right? Because you have the officers who are the victims. I mean, these guys, from their perspective, they had somebody leveling a shotgun at them. I mean, nobody wants that. So you got them, and then their comrades, the people that they work with that are under the same umbrella conducting this investigation. And it's like, it's like a scene from Deliverance, right? I mean, it really, you need outside eyes. But all that said, bottom line is at that point, they cuff Nick and they take him for the ride. So let's go on to this before we run out of time and don't get into the whole subject.
We're good.
I wish I would never have said that. I took it back immediately and apologized. But words, once you throw them out there, they actually used every word I said against me. You guys read the A forms. I was trying to be as forthcoming as possible, and I should have just not said anything.
But they wrote a lot of things in there that was positive, that showed that you were trying to de-escalate prior to that point. They wrote things where you said, "Can I speak to a supervisor?" And the one cop says, "I didn't understand if he meant my supervisor or his supervisor." And when I told him, "Well, we can't get a supervisor from Miami-Dade out," that you, I think, said something like, "I understand. I get it. It's, I understand I get it." Mm-hmm. So you were actually trying to de-escalate it, but at some point you got frustrated, and that's normal. Mm-hmm. So now you're being taken down. Mm-hmm. You get booked. So explain to them what the booking process is and how you were treated.
Well, they didn't allow me to get shoes on or anything. I was wearing flip-flops. My house is, it's a tri-level house with a little hill that goes down. And they'd take me down the hill. One of the flip-flops popped. So I'm basically on one shoe. No, they wouldn't let me get shoes, which kind of sucked because I paid the price later on at the jail. They go to Miami they go to the local jailhouse. Sit there for, I don't know, you lose track of time. It's late. All I know that the lights are always on. Everything's concrete. There's a little window. You can see them typing, doing stuff. But somebody came and checked on me one time, asked me if I was all right. There's water comes out of a sink. It's terrible. It's horrible. I lost track of time. I had no idea what time it was. At some time that night, they come in and tell me, "Hey, we're going to transport you to TGK." Okay. So this is real. As we're going to TGK, one of the officers that was transporting me, he had nothing to do with the arrest and wasn't on scene. He got lost. He's going down a wrong way. I can't make this up. I swear to you. He's going down, and I'm thinking, my actual thought was, I'm not kidding. I thought, damn, this is okay. Maybe they're teaching me a lesson. They're going to drop me off, somewhere in a bad neighborhood and make me walk home. Beat me with a rubber hose, teach me a lesson, go home. I thought that was going on. That didn't happen. But I asked him, he said, no, it's the other way. So we finally make it over there.
So wait, you had to tell the cop transporting you how to get to TGK.
And by the way, his office was pretty much across the street from TGK at the time, correct?
Unfortunately, yeah, because
Jeez.
You go to TGK and I'm fast forwarding a little bit. When you get discharged, call it, or released from TGK, there's a fire station across the street. I had to walk to that fire station. And when you walk across 41st Street, it's a 1,000-yard walk. It's just when the red light stops, everybody's looking at you. They know where you come from. I've got jail shoes.
A broken flip. Oh, yeah, they gave you the jail ones.
It was it's just one of the darkest moments of my life. It was horrible.
And again, if you had done something where you broke the law, Nick, even if you're a wonderful human being, you broke the law, but you didn't do anything wrong here.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, fast forward from what happens when you get out of TGK.
When you get into TGK, it's this whole process. They're asking you all these medical questions. Do you want to kill yourself? All this. I'm like, what the hell happened?
No, but there are a couple of Miami Shores cops that I might want to kill. That may not have gone over well.
What happened? And I'm in the Twilight Zone. And eventually they take your clothes and give you a part of we call them the Cabbage Patch. The orange or the red jumpsuits. And I found out I got a red jumpsuit, which meant I was...
You were violent. The red one is you're supposed to be violent, no?
I don't know. I think you're protected. More of you're kept away from just a regular, population. I'm grateful for that. But my wife made a phone call. Some of the people she worked with, she was on duty that night, by the way, so she had to get that call. She's a lieutenant on the fire department also. Okay. And... corrections guys, the corrections department, word got through to the people working there to look after me. They were the only ones that night to actually help or look after me in just little tiny ways here and there, which was good.
So you were treated pretty well by corrections.
Absolutely.
You get out, ultimately
Very fairly.
you post bond, you have to hire a lawyer.
Yeah.
So how's that happen?
Well, fire department has very strict policies, this and the other. That's why I crossed and went to the fire department, got on the computer, logged on, made the phone calls. I took care of that part of the process. The next part of the process, they don't care. Fire department doesn't care either. They have their little things they have to do. You have to go do your analysis, this and the other, make sure you're not on drugs, blah, blah, blah. I'm not. So you go home, you got to explain this to your wife. How is this going to impact my life? I'm a few years away from retirement. What is this going to do to us? What is this, not just financially, but as a man and a woman and a family and with, and our friends, what's it going to do to my whole life? I didn't know. I was in shock. And finding an attorney. Well, a few years back, I had a chance meeting with a guy in downtown. An attorney stopped me on the road, fluke meeting. We had talked about it. And I had his card. It was a cool looking card. It said criminal defense. I thought I would never, ever have to use it, but I kept it with my cards and the Rolodex.
And people want to know why I hand out business cards. Now, it wasn't my card. I wasn't the lawyer on that case.
They work. So I had Linda look for it and made the call. I didn't know who to call. Yes, I work for the county. Yes, I work with the police, but I'm not a police officer. I do the fire side of stuff, the fire rescue side of stuff. But I have no idea what you guys do.
So let me ask you, how did it work out for you, the random lawyer that handed you a business card in the middle of the street? How'd that work out for you? Tell the audience how that worked out for you.
Worst decision of my life.
Maybe you should stop handing out business cards.
Worst decision of my life.
Well,
actually,
it's not even the handing out the business card that's the problem. It's the performance that's the problem.
I get it.
So,
but I mean, listen.
let the man tell his story.
You can't just hire a lawyer because he handed you a business card. But it's hard. I get it. We're going to talk about it.
So my wife had been contacted by several people. It's morning time. It's 7. I'm in jail. I don't know what's going on. I'm in a separate cell. They keep you isolated for 24 hours. I didn't know I was going to get released anyway, but we got a bail bondsman, another $1,000, whatever it is. Another expense right off the bat, first expense. And I'm out. Now we start looking for attorneys. I was looking for bail bondsmen inside the jail. They had a little phone and a book. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not that guy. We don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. So I tried doing what I could. I didn't know what was going on the outside. I couldn't talk to my wife.
And that's got to be horrible.
So there's different things happening.
The desperation when you can't get a hold of anybody is horrible.
It's like losing your cell phone nowadays. Something. What do you
Only
think?
worse because you're behind bars.
Worse, you're behind bars.
Slightly worse. It's like being in Facebook jail and losing your cell phone.
And if not protected by the corrections officers, you wouldn't have time to do that because you'd have to be getting into fist fights the whole time.
Oh my God! You have to follow a white line to go to the bathroom. And you have to follow that line back to your seat.
I may or may not know what you're talking about, so let's just leave it at that.
Anyway, I was going to the lawyer, so I did hire him. We had multiple other references, and somebody else knew him. They had an experience with him. Said, "Oh yeah, he's a big name." Linda looked him up real fast. Big name. Okay, so we went to go see him. Made the phone call. Hey, this is Nick Marian. He doesn't know who I am. We had a meeting. We met on the street last year, within the year, where you and your sidekick. We talked a little bit. You told me, hey, I helped somebody out, and they were impressed by that. Just, something anybody does. And gave me the card. So I'm calling you. I need some help. I said, oh, what's the story? I gave them the story, and they said, well, that's going to cost this much. A lot.
Big name, big number.
Big name, big number. But
why did you hire him? What made you think so? I mean, he gave you a card. You probably thought, well, that's the only lawyer I know. But you still have to decide to hire him.
No, but he said his wife Googled him and she verified him, and they knew somebody else who had used him. So there was some level of confidence.
Right. But he also, when you went to his office, did his office?
When you go to the office, it's in South Dadeland area. It's in this giant tower of glass and way up there. And he's got this office that looks over the county. It's like on a pedestal and stuff. It's like a kingdom. He's got his thing in there. Very impressive.
His office.
But when you go in and you talk to him initially, and you talk to another attorney. I call her his sidekick. I'm not going to mention her by name, but really that's who you're dealing with. I didn't know that. I thought you dealt with him.
The associate.
That's what we thought. Yeah, with the associate. That's the one you're dealing with. When I dealt with Mike, I dealt with Mike. I never had anybody else I had to deal with. I thought it was going to be that way initially. I learned it wasn't. Time goes on. I see him less and less. He's not representing me in the courtroom. His son, who had just became a lawyer, just passed the bar or something, is now representing me. And the other attorney's representing me. And it was 5 months into the case, I go to talk to him, and he's like, "You're fine. Refresh me again. What was your case? Oh, yeah, you're the guy that held the gun up for 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. I wrote it down. I did a little preparation for this day. So I'm looking back on my old notes, and that's what I wrote. And so writing reports my whole life. So.
It was 5 seconds, not 5 minutes.
So the whole point was this guy, he didn't know. They were basically giving me the low-hanging mango proverbial case where easiest way out for them.
Right.
Easiest way
So
out.
did they suggest you take a plea?
Yes. I had no idea what that was. This guy co-authored a book on Stand Your Ground. He hadn't.
You know what co-author means? It means he didn't write it. When anybody that's co-author,
his picture was in it.
That wrote it,
and he was throughout the book. But anyway, he never once mentioned Stand Your Ground to me.
Didn't even think of it.
Not once was it mentioned. 5 or 6 months downstream, down the line, I'm freaked out. I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to be nice to everybody because I don't know if I'm going to piss somebody off, whether it's on this side or that side. That's going to, it's just you break that wrong branch and you're going to slide down. I don't know what's happening. My wife is a little more ballsy than I am right now. She went up there. We decided to have a meeting with them. I forgot the date. I think it was September. And we went up to go see Mr. The attorney. Thank you.
Don't
No. And we were pretty much ambushed. They brought us into his throne, and they had everybody up there. Just me and my wife, with the court. And it was my wife who said,
right.
What's going on? He's not guilty of anything. Up until now, I felt like I was, I've done something really wrong. That math never computed in my brain. But I've kind of became convinced, and I'm looking for any way out of this because I wanted pretrial. Sounds good. Let's do this. I'll be good for a year, and in a year, I'm back to working, back to normal. My life is good. I'll retire in a couple of years. Speed bump in the road of life, right? My wife stood up and said, "What are you after? More money? Is this what this is about? More money?" And we caught him off guard, the main attorney. And they didn't have an answer. They didn't want to pursue, or they didn't want to do the work. And
when they were talking about the plea, did they seem like when you say you were ambushed? I mean, I know because I've seen it when I was a state attorney. I've seen these guys argue with their clients in the hallway. But I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that they kind of were trying to force you into taking this plea.
And that's what I meant by ambushed. Yes.
Yeah, they're trying to force you.
They were there using whatever persuasion they could to try to force and convince me and my wife to accept, mostly her. I was ready to accept it because I didn't know better. I just wanted out of this. I didn't know what else.
This is good for people that are watching and you're listening, because one of the things that Nick is sharing with you, and why I was so happy he could share it with you, is it's hard. I know it's really difficult for clients, especially guys like Nick that haven't been through the system, to be able to see what is really happening with your lawyer, with your defense lawyer. And this is a good rule of thumb that you now know. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're going to remember this for the rest of your life. A lawyer who is trying to push you into a plea is not doing you any favors. Let me finish. If he's trying to push you into a plea, he's not doing you any favors. Because if the plea was in your best interest, I'm going to tell you, Nick, this is what's in your best interest. This is why you should take this plea. If we go to trial and we lose, these are the consequences. But this is what I always tell my client, and I know you do too, and a good lawyer does. But at the end of the day, it's your decision, Nick. And if you want me to go into hell, go right into through the gates of hell to fight for you at a trial, I'll be there. But just know if we lose, you're going to prison for 20 years. Are you okay with that? Yeah. I'm not the one going to jail. Why am I forcing this man to take a plea? I give him advice. That's what the lawyer does. That's what Michael does. I'm sure Michael told him, Nick, these are the consequences. If we lose this motion, these are the consequences. But do you want to do this? Because it's his life.
We hadn't gotten to that point yet because he's, still, remember, this man's now been out of work for 5-6 months. He's had no pay. His wife is working double shifts so that they can pay their bills. They're liquidating assets to pay mortgages.
Yes.
I mean, this is your reality, right? I mean, I'm not making this up.
My wife is working her regular job, as much overtime as she could. I'd fallen and broken a couple of ribs, but I still made every court date, which I think the judge impressed the judge. Hopefully.
No.
Maybe
Does it really?
I don't know.
But these are the things that clients do think. Listen, it's normal for you to think that.
When we were when Nick and I were talking about this before the show, one of the things that he mentioned to me that I didn't know and never came up, we had just never discussed it, was this lawyer actually had Nick appear at his arraignment. And I said to Nick, I go, what do you mean? Because Nick had, he's very diligent. He's got notes about everything that he did. He's got calendars.
And I'll tell you in a minute why he did that.
Well, I mean, you and I know why he did it, but I said to Nick, I go, what do you mean you were at the arraignment? You had a lawyer and you were at the arraignment? And he said, yeah, of course. You had me at the arraignment. That was the only time that particular lawyer actually showed up in court, was at the arraignment.
Right.
He didn't show up for any other hearing. He sent other people.
Do you know why he wanted you at the arraignment?
His son.
But do you know why he wanted you at the arraignment? To see if he could plead it out, so he only had to go to court once.
That's what we talked. That's what Nick and I talked about.
That's why they do this. Because honestly, you are not required to be at the arraignment. Neither are we. There's
only 3 reasons for a criminal defendant to ever appear at an arraignment. 1, if they are in custody, because then they're brought to the arraignment, they can refuse to go.
Sometimes they're not even brought.
They can refuse to go, but as a general rule, if you're in custody, you're transported for arraignment. 2, if you don't have a lawyer,
right?
You haven't hired a lawyer and you don't show up for your arraignment, you're going to get a bench warrant. So that's a good reason to be there. And then 3, the only other reason to be there is if your lawyer has a reason for you to be there, such as they're going to enroll you in PTI that day, or they're going to try and see if they can get a quick plea and close the case.
The short answer is this, which we've done. We call the prosecutor in advance of the arraignment, and the prosecutor says, listen, this is the offer that I'd give you at arraignment, and it's just an incredibly sweetheart deal based on what I already have. We're looking at it thinking this is unbelievable that they're making this offer to us. And then we turn to the client and say, do you want to do this? Because even then, if the client says no, I'm like, hey, sorry, dude, my client doesn't want to take it. So the only reason that really these lawyers do it outside of those 3 is they're trying to get you to take a plea, which I'm sure they made you an offer, and they said to you, we think you should take it.
Yes.
You see? Because then they don't work. Then they charge you the money and they work less.
So after months and months and months of this and several hearings and rejecting pleas back and forth and not agreeing to accept, ultimately,
it was an easy out. I saw it as an easy out, and I finally said, it doesn't matter if I'm looked upon as guilty. I just want out of this.
Right.
I just want to get back to my life.
But Linda wasn't having that.
Linda wasn't having that.
Thank God for Linda.
Thank God for Linda. Absolutely. Thank God for you, Linda.
So what happened?
Well, it got to after that meeting, we decided that he's not doing the things, in my best interest. Things are not going where they should go. And Linda's convincing me that I did nothing wrong, and I'm still confused. So I spoke to 5 other attorneys. Some I went and visited. We mentioned one today. Others I spoke to on the phone. Some were interested in the case, others not. I'd go to police officers or ex-cops that were firemen, whose opinions I trust very much, and they would suggest an attorney, and it just wasn't a right match.
Right.
One day I was having a chance back at Steve's Pizza, where all this started, or because of it. And
you ran into this jamoke?
No, I met a friend. I met a fellow firefighter who he had gotten in some trouble, and I should have gone to somebody who got in trouble to refer an attorney in the first place. And Mike had represented him, and done so well on several occasions. And I thought, what the heck? What have I got to lose? And Mike, the day I called you and I spoke to him, it was clear by just your demeanor and your voice on the phone and your no BS attitude that
Right.
This is worth further exploration. And when we spoke, he did something nobody else did. He said, we need to come to your house and look at the scene so I can get a better idea of what happened that night. Mind blown. Nobody did that. Nobody ever thought about that. Nobody wanted to look at pictures, even though, I did, some pictures and drawings, this and the other, to bring to whoever wanted to see them. Nobody was really interested.
Right.
You could take it from there, Mike. I mean,
Well, so at that time, my partner, Mark Morris, and I came to your house.
yes.
And we met with you and Linda, and we reviewed your police report, and we did a walkthrough, and we had you show us exactly what happened. And based on what we saw, we gave you advice. And apparently you liked what you heard, and you engaged us. And the next thing that we said was, now we need to bring our investigator out. And those of you who have watched this show before may have seen the show with Carlos Fuentes. Carlos was our investigator. He came to Nick's house. He met with us. He met with Nick. And we had him recreate the incident, both outside from the police perspective, so that we could not rely on the self-serving police report, which we could talk about in a minute. And then we had him do it from the inside as well, so that it wouldn't be just Nick trying to explain what he was able to see or not see and why, but we could actually show it to the judge. Because we knew we were going to have a hearing. And that at that evidentiary hearing, we would be able to put Carlos on the witness stand, authenticate the videos, and show the judge so that she could see. Because when you get arrested, let's not take this situation where the police had a vested interest, okay? But in any case, that A form, that arrest report, that probable cause affidavit, it ought to read like your worst nightmare.
Right.
If it doesn't read like your worst nightmare, you're not guilty. It's got to say everything within the boundaries of what it's supposed to say.
And in all fairness to the police, even this police department, it's not their, we've talked about this before as a prosecutor, and bear with me a second, it's not their duty to include exculpatory evidence. Now, they're supposed to consider it, but when they write the A form, they're writing everything that proves you're guilty. It's the defense attorney's job. That's what Mike and I do. That is our job. And as a prosecutor, I appreciated guys like Mike. That's why I'm the way I am now, because I know that there are prosecutors at the Dade State Attorney's Office that appreciate guys like us. Our job is to show the prosecutor, listen, this is the story you got from the cops. Fair. Some of that maybe, sometimes, yes, everything they wrote is true. But let me tell you what they left out. And this part helps the prosecutor identify that maybe he or she should charge.
In a case like this, and I can tell you that I've done about a dozen stand your ground cases now. And every single one of those cases, either Mark or I or both of us have filed a written pleading requesting, in fact, demanding statutory immunity pursuant to stand your ground. And we've explained in our pleadings why our client should be immunized. In every single one of those instances, the state attorney has basically said, screw you, screw your opinion, and they forced us to go to a hearing. And we've never lost one. We don't file bad faith motions. We just don't do it. But some lawyers do, some don't. We don't. So when we file a motion and the prosecutor looks at it and fluffs it off and says, this is ridiculous and, this guy needs to be prosecuted. Well, you know what? Maybe you need to take a deep breath and have a second set of eyes. Just like those officers on scene. If they had, I know that it's not legally mandated. I know there's no protocol for it, but I'm just saying, if they had brought an independent third-party investigator to the scene and everybody got to explain to this third party what happened, this arrest probably would not have occurred.
Yeah, but that's a little unrealistic. I'll tell you where the big
maybe
problem,
yes, maybe
in
no.
this case, I'll tell you where the big problem was. The sergeant that came to the scene was part of the problem. That I'm telling you. As a former prosecutor, and part of, I don't know if you've, in these stand your ground motions that you filed, if they've been with what we call division prosecutor or special unit prosecutors. The special unit prosecutors tend to have a little more experience, and they can see that their job is to do justice, not to prosecute.
Again, I'm 12 for 12 in these, but not because the government has ever said you're right. Only because the judge has.
I get it.
And poor Nick.
The sergeant on the scene, they don't need an independent investigator. The sergeant on the scene should have recognized this man is in his home. Nobody called because he was shooting a gun in this house or in this front yard.
Let me tell you what's more amazing than that, okay? What's more amazing than that is that the big name, big dollar lawyer who represented this man for 5-6 months
Good job.
never once mentioned the 3 words, stand your ground. Never once went to his house. Never once looked at the crime scene.
Correct.
Never once, even though he wrote a book, never once identified this.
Co-wrote
a book. Never once identified these things to Nick. So when this was brought up, the hardest thing that I had to do as a lawyer was convince my client that he wasn't a defendant. He was a victim. That was the absolute hardest part of my job.
And that actually is, Nick, you're not alone. I don't know about you, but I find that my clients that are in Nick's position, that they're the first time through, that it's the first time through the criminal justice system, a lot of times tend to think that they're guilty when they're really not. But then the guys that have been through the system a lot come to me and be like, I can win this. Why don't you fight a stand your ground motion? I'm like, because there's no stand your ground motion here, dude.
Well,
It's the opposite.
What was your having gone through what you went through, having been at the point that you were at, when you got a new perspective, what happened? How did you feel? What was it like? I mean, how did you wrap your brain around that?
The feeling of acceptance that I may have been guilty of something wrong, which didn't really, didn't compute. It still wasn't sitting right with me. It kind of went away. You convinced me maybe now I'm the victim. It really just swayed my entire mentality.
It wasn't maybe. You were the victim in this case.
It just changed my entire outlook from one of resignation, and I was ready to take that plea because the other guy never made the offer. The other guy never. It was 4 or 5 months before they even asked. I got all the documentations. I've kept it. I got to throw that out someday. But I've got every email still, and I went back there. But then it took 5 months for them to get the police officers' records and stuff. I never got one letter of correspondence from them. As soon as Mike took my case, I was getting emails every day. Every time something happened, I'm like, why is this guy sending me all this stuff? Nobody else did.
I didn't know. You're like, all right, it's enough already.
That's what I hired you for. Yeah, I didn't know he was actually supposed to be doing this.
Yeah, it's called an ethical canon. The Florida bar actually has rules that require their lawyers to communicate with their clients and to provide them with copies of the documents in their file and, little things like that are,
Not one. My favorite day was when I was able to sign the paper and I got a call from the other side when I fired them, essentially, and you took the case. That made me feel good. It was, I kind of felt like that the tide is starting to turn.
So when we had to go to court, you and I, ultimately for just a status conference, I had already substituted in as your lawyer, and we had made the decision that we were going forward with stand your ground. And I explained to you the process and the procedure, and that we were going to have an evidentiary hearing, and you were going to have to testify.
And you gave me a reasonable time frame, which somebody else did.
We worked quick. We worked as quick as we could, but due diligence, there were still things that we had to make sure that we did right. So we had talked this through, and you understood that you were going to stand in front of the judge and that we were going to tell the judge that we wanted a date and a hearing date for our stand your ground hearing. And just share with the folks how that went.
We got about 2 minutes left.
Okay, so I'm standing in a courtroom. I forgot what the name of the court, whatever the hearing is. But I either take their plea. They were all happy. They thought it was all sealed up. Just got to tie the string and, or take the stand your ground, the motion, I guess, stand your ground. And I'm standing there in front of the judge, and the prosecutor hits me with, you're looking at a minimum of 6 years up to 30 years. I've never heard that. I never heard the 30-year thing. All of a sudden, everything, the screen went blank. It just, what the hell is this? Where did this come from?
It's crazy.
How do I go from writing rescue 2 weeks ago? I'm on a fire truck. 2 weeks ago, living a normal life, trying to be a productive citizen, living a clean life, to I'm going to jail for 30 years. For what did I do? And it just kind of brought me back. And Mike kind of nudges me and said, "Hey, we talked about this outside. I'm going to take your man card from you in a second. You better
listen." And
he shook me out of it. Basically,
the law, a lot of times when it comes to negotiation, is just like playing poker. Sometimes both sides are bluffing. It's the first one that blinks.
They were pissed, but Mike got me out of that fog. And long story short, we're going to fight this. And
look where you are.
I kind of saw a little bit of nervousness on their side. That's the first time I was really, man, we got a really good shot at this.
Because sometimes it's important to have a lawyer that's going to stand up. Mike, why don't you take us out?
I wish we had a lot more time to go through the rest of it, but we went through an evidentiary hearing.
Sorry.
You testified, your wife testified, our investigator testified, the police officers testified, and the judge, heard all the evidence and made the right ruling.
Absolutely.
And gave you your good name, restored your good name to you. And then you got reinstated at work. Your wife got to relax and put her feet up a little bit and didn't have to pull any more doubles. And then it was a couple of years left, and then you retired.
Yes.
And now you're a free man.
Now I've been retired for a few years, and
Awesome.
I had a part-time job I was working, but I retired from that also.
Good for
and
you.
Now I'm good to go.
Guys, another show. We try to bring stuff for you so you can understand, and really it's for the audience, for the citizens, the people that need to hire lawyers. This could happen to you.
Yeah.
This could happen to any of you. This is why you got to vote when it comes down to vote for judges. That's why you got to vote for the state attorneys. This is why you got to get out and vote, because he thought you were never going to see a judge, and there you are. We're trying to bring some of this to you as well. Michael and I, that's why we're here at your service.
Like Nick said during his interview on the news and the clip that we showed right up front, you may have to defend yourself someday. It's possible. And you need to be prudent, and you need to think things through, and always be prepared, because you never know what's going to come.
Or you can watch us every Monday at 2, where we're going to be here
at your service.